Our pleasure to bring in Brody Miller from The Athletic on the Jim's Firearm Hotline. Brody, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing just fine here as we get through the middle of December. Probably doing better than a lot of college football coaches who are dealing with a lot at the moment. I get this question 100 times. You cover the team very closely and have written about this a little bit, so I'll toss it to you. Why hadn't they fired the special teams coach?
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on there. I think one, it's tough. I mean, yes, I don't think anyone around LSU would claim that LSU special teams are up to snuff. There, it's been a disaster. I don't think there's any way around that. But at the same time, I think there is an element of like, okay, we all. Here's how I'd put it, and I'm not defending Brian Polian or anything, but we all talked going into this year about how like the depth of this LSU team was its weakness. Like, really good talent at the top, but doesn't have any depth. And quite frankly, I mean, that special teams is the depth spot. So as much as like you might see some great stuff at like receiver and D line and all that, like special teams is depth. You're not playing BJ Zolari out there or anything like that. So I do think that's like worth factoring in a little bit. That okay, they lost the kicker after having like 5 years of kicker continuity, lost the punter, lost like a long snapper, all that stuff. So I just think that's worth factoring in. It's still not like an excuse. I don't think Brian Polian would sit here and say he's content with how it's done. But then it's also you got to factor in Brian Polian is Brian Kelly's guy. He's the first guy he brought with him. He's not going to just like loosey goosey fire him in a situation that I know Brian Kelly views it as like this is part of the process, and I don't think he viewed that as like necessarily Brian Polian being a mess at his job or anything like that. I think
And I,
there's some moments that go on, yeah.
No, I mean, I just to your point, like there was some talk around here when Les Miles wouldn't change the offense. The engine's pretty stinking good. He was just going to do it his way. I don't feel like that's the case here. I talked to Brian Polian for an assistant coach interview of the week on the pregame show. That's admittedly a fluff piece for 3 minutes where I just tossed softballs at him. But I said, how would you characterize the development of the special teams over the course of the season? He was like, I mean, let's just be real. It's been very, very poor. Like he said that to
Yeah,
me on the air. Like they know they got to do a lot better next year.
exactly. And I think they know, like, for example, I know for a fact that, they look back on not, they lost Trey Palmer, obviously, he left. And I remember, and one person said to me, like, that, like, not going out and getting another return man, that was a mistake that they're going to absolutely rectify this cycle. Or, I think there's so many examples of some of the mistakes with, like, penalties and things of just being like, hey, that's where you see the depth. It is still problematic, but and I don't know if it's going to be better. This isn't me being like Brian Polian is the guy who's going to save everything. No, I just think like special teams is an area that you see isolated plays. So when there's a mess up, it is so clear it's a mess up. While like other plays, and does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
it's very highlightable. But I'm not again. It's bad, but I don't think it's you have to fire the guy year one when it might be some of what he inherited.
College football fans, I think, are very comfortable with the recruiting calendar. You've got your junior days, you've got your camps, you've got official visits, unofficials, and then you've got your signing day and your early signing period, late. So we kind of get that. As far as the transfer portal, that's a little bit new, and Brian Kelly has talked about his approach to the transfer portal. It's not just open up the gates and let everybody in. From what you've gathered, what does that process look like when they look to evaluate who to bring in from the transfer portal?
Yeah, I think if you and I think there were some lessons we could have learned from last one, but even more than that, they slow play things. They are very much like every coach says you want to bring the right guys, right? Like that's the thing. But we know we saw with Ed Ogeron toward the end, and so many coaches, like it's harder to actually do that when you see the flashy toy. And Brian Kelly, I actually feel confident saying this, and I've seen it up close. He actually does the research. Like that, their staff is trained to like meet with the teachers, meet with every like extra person who knows them, and do the vetting of whether a guy's actually a good character fit, whether he is the right kind of guy to bring into their program. And I think you saw that last cycle with, and that's almost an abbreviated version because they were coming in late. They had to bring in 17, 16 guys. It was like a whirlwind, but they still slow played it. So like January and February and March of kind of making sure guys were the right fits. And that's how you got your Mekhi Wingos, your Greg Brookses, guys who not just were good, but were your main leaders. And that's my main answer to your question is they've obviously got, a solid handful. I think they're coming up on 10 offers by now. They're offering guys, but at the same time, they are very methodical about making sure it's not going to mess up kind of the momentum I think they've built, because we all talk about accountability and all that, and that's not nothing. And I think that's a big part of it.
Brody Miller, our guest from The Athletic. Is there a name or two you think are prime targets and likely players that would join this football program from the transfer portal?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think one to obviously watch, that's a very exciting and flashy and all that is Aaron Anderson from Alabama. Obviously, the New Orleans kid, was an LSU commit, flipped the Bama after O got fired, or right before O got fired, but still. And yeah, I think, I will reference this, that when a kid's in the portal, they often tell, it says like want to be contacted or don't want to be contacted, and he put do not want to be contacted, which again, don't want to speculate, but that often means they kind of already know where they're going. And I think LSU has made quick contact on that. And I think LSU is considered the front runner with Aaron Anderson, who, again, I don't know if this is exactly who Brian Polian means when he wants, a return man, but still, he is an elite return talent. So I think he would really be an exciting one. Obviously, a really interesting one to follow is Denver Harris, the 5-star corner from A&M, who had issues at A&M. I mean, that's just the reality. I mean, we have really good reporters who cover A&M for us, The Athletic, and yeah, I don't think he's in the like bad kid, like massive issue or did some terrible thing. But yeah, he got in trouble a good bit. He did some kind of young kid, dumb things, and I think. I believe Shea Dixon reported, and I confirmed that Brian Kelly is having his meeting with Denver Harris today, and that's going to be very, very important to kind of figure out if Kelly feels comfortable with him being the right fit. But after that, yeah, there's a lot of D linemen they're going for from Oregon, from Arizona, from Coastal Carolina, a lot of guys. So it seems like getting one or two at D tackle is going to be important just for depth. Their starters are pretty set, so you need to build that depth. I think they know they need an edge. They got some guys who are interesting at edge right now, but they don't have anyone who I think you're confident is ready to be an SEC starter right now. So I think they do have to keep looking for the right edge as well.
I thought about how I wanted to ask this question. Here's what I settled on.
Ooh.
How important is the quarterback play in the Citrus Bowl to next year's LSU's football team?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't think Brian Kelly is somebody who judges anything on one data point. You know what I mean? So I think my quick answer would be, not incredibly monumental, but of course there's factors to this, right? Like if Jane Daniels doesn't go, because there's probably no need to like rush him if he's hurt or something, like if he's not 100%, and Nussmeier tears it up again and Daniels comes back, yeah, I think it's pretty reasonable just to be like, hey, it might make sense for Gary Nussmeier to go to the portal because he has good tape out there and he can go prove he's the guy. Some people around LSU feel pretty confident that Jane Daniels might come back. Others aren't so sure. But so I think that's kind of what you're alluding to.
Yeah.
But it's just tough because so much of it really is just like comes down to the thinking of the kid. And, I know I've been told Gary Nussmeier is a kid who gets it. Like he gets that like there's a long term to this and like being developed and being ready when you start is a big, but at the same time, being ready to be like, hey, I'm going to wait 3 years. That's tough, man. That's really tough. So I don't know the answer, but it will be very interesting to see what happens.
Last one here. Appreciate your time, Brody. Any sense of what Jaquelin Roy's future may hold?
Yeah, not a ton. I'll be honest. I've been trying to kind of gain some information on that. I haven't gotten a great sense. It's like his stock isn't great. He's not in any first round mocks anymore. I haven't even seen him in like the talking to our Dame Brugler, things like that. He's probably a second-round guy right now, if I had to guess, but he didn't have the breakout year. He had a good year, but Kelly talked often about, like, consistency was tough with him. In some moments he'd be great, but they were looking on him to be, reliable day-to-day. And, again, you look at Kayshon Boutte coming back, you look at some others, it's like, I do think Kelly and his staff have done a good job of kind of, like, selling what coming back can do and selling how, like, proving I don't know how one coming back shows something character-wise. I think he's very good at kind of playing that game with guys. So I wouldn't rule it out. I don't think so. But at the same time, like if he is a second-round grade, that's also hard to say no to, even though some thought it would be first. But I don't have a great answer for you there. It's a good question.
That was a good answer. Maybe we'll get some clarity here as things move. That used to be a thing we worried about after the bowl game. Now it's right after Thanksgiving. We've got to deal with it. So
all timelines have just been completely ruined forever now.
They really have. Appreciate your thoughts,
At least we have
Brody.
a transfer window now.
That does, for sure. And I don't envy the college football coaches this time of year at all. Thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, thanks, Louis. Take care.